Let me start with a question. What if the biggest threat to your financial future isn't a bad investment, isn't a market crash, isn't even low income? What if it's the tiny decisions you barely notice making? The ones that feel harmless, convenient, even normal. The kind of decisions no one warns you about because each one only costs a little. But over time, they don't cost thousands of dollars, they cost hundreds of thousands, sometimes millions. And the most expensive ones of all are the things we quietly contract out, things we pay other people to do for us that we could do ourselves. Not because we're lazy and not because we're careless, but because we've been taught that time spent doing these things is wasted time. Welcome to Millionaire Thinking, where we are dedicated to helping people achieve, protect, and expand their financial freedom. And today we're going to challenge that idea of wasted time by following the real lifestyle example of Paul and Linda, a couple who made a very different set of small decisions. They weren't extreme, they weren't dramatic, they were just intentional. And those decisions quietly changed everything. First, let's talk about how these decisions actually show up. They don't announce themselves. They usually sound something like this. I'll just pay someone this time. I don't feel like dealing with it. It's not worth my time. And honestly, each decision feels rational. Take something simple, for example, a $50 service once a month. No big deal, right? That's $600 a year. But that's where most people stop thinking, because the real cost isn't $600. The real cost is $600 every year that could have been invested instead of spent over decades. At a realistic 10% annual return, roughly the long-term average of the S&P 500, that $600 per year invested for 30 years becomes over $98,000 from one small, forgettable decision. Now imagine that wasn't just one thing. Here's where it adds up fast. Modern life is built around outsourcing. Not just the big things, but everything. Let's run through some common ones that fall into the category of personal services. Things like house cleaning, runs about $150 per month. Lawn service, $40 to $60 per visit. Hair coloring, roughly $150 every 6 to 8 weeks. Nail services, $60 to $100 per month. Each one feels manageable, but together, they can easily hit $6,000 or more per year. Now here's the uncomfortable part. If that $6,000 per year was invested instead at 10% for 30 years, that comes out to almost $1 million. Let me repeat that so it can sink in. $1 million. No raises required, no side hustle, just redirected money. This is where Paul and Linda's story comes in. Paul and Linda weren't extreme savers. They were your everyday average hardworking couple. Two incomes, busy schedules, and good intentions. They paid for lawn service, regular hair appointments, minor home repairs, oil changes, and basic maintenance. Not because they were careless, but because it was convenient and it felt like the grown-up thing to do. And for years they never questioned it. Until one day Paul noticed something strange. Their income had gone up, but their savings had hardly budged. So Paul and Linda did something uncomfortable. They sat down at their kitchen table and tracked where their money was going, not just for bills, but for conveniences too. And what they saw surprised them. Paul and Linda didn't flip a switch overnight. They ran a couple household experiments first. Experiment number one was lawn care. $50 per mow, approximately 40 mows per year. That comes to $2,000 annually. So Paul drove over to his local lawn and garden equipment store and bought a push mower, an edger, and a leaf blower. Their total cost the first year, $700. Their savings, $1,300 the first year and about $2,000 every year thereafter. Invested at 10% for 30 years, that's over $349,000 for one chore and a couple of hours of work each week. Experiment number two was basic home repairs. A leaky faucet, a running toilet, and a loose outlet. All relatively minor fixes. Before, that would mean a $150 plumber call and a $200 electrician visit. Now, about $50 for tools and parts, a couple of YouTube tutorials, and 30 to 60 minutes of effort. They didn't become experts, they just became capable. Paul and Linda's savings? About $500 per year. But 30 years at 10%, $82,000. Before we move on, I'd like to ask you a small favor. If you appreciate this content, please take a second to like this video and subscribe to the channel. It costs you nothing, but it makes a huge difference to us. So, did you click the subscribe button? Great. Thank you so much. Now back to the video. One expense category that quietly surprised Paul and Linda was food. Not groceries, but convenience food. For years, Paul and Linda had been using Uber Eats and DoorDash, but not obsessively. It was usually once or sometimes twice a week. They knew it was an indulgence, but it was convenient. Sometimes they were busy or simply tired, and after a long day, convenience felt earned. A few taps on a phone, and dinner would show up on their doorstep. At first, it didn't feel like much. An average order came out to about $45 to $50 once you factor in delivery fees, service fees, tips, and the quiet price inflation inside the apps. At 1 to 2 deliveries per week, that worked out to roughly $400 per month on delivered dinners. And then there was lunch. Paul and Linda didn't eat out every day, but each of them grabbed lunch near work about 2 to 3 times per week. At about $12 to $15 per meal, that added up to another $300 to $350 per month. None of it felt excessive, but when they finally added it up, between delivered dinners and work lunches, they were spending about $700 to $750 per month on food they could have mostly made themselves. It didn't amount to a full-blown crisis, but it was definitely a leak they wanted to plug. Let's be clear, Paul and Linda didn't decide to cut everything out. They just decided to be more selective and intentional about their spending on conveniences. They limited food delivery to once or twice per month for those occasional nights when they really needed a break or simply wanted to treat themselves. And they each started packing their lunches more often, still eating out 2 or 3 times a month, but cutting back significantly. Just simple meals packed at home. Leftovers, sandwiches, nothing difficult or impressive. And they also started cooking dinner at home more often. Not every night. They didn't want to make a strict rule about it. They just cooked at home a little more and ordered delivery a little less. And something unexpected happened. Cooking became their time. They turned the music on, put their phones down, and they talked about their day while chopping vegetables and prepping dinner, laughing when something didn't turn out right. What used to feel like a chore started to feel like connection. And financially, the change was meaningful. Their food spending dropped by about $450 per month. That's $5,400 per year. Now here's where this stops being about food. Instead of letting that savings disappear, Paul and Linda invested it into the same low-cost S&P 500 index fund. So let's quickly do the math. $450 per month, $5,400 per year, 30 years, 10% average annual return. That quietly grows to around $888,000. That's not giving up convenience food completely. It's just from cooking more meals at home, packing more lunches, and using convenience selectively, not automatically. This is where most people object and say, but my time is valuable. That's true. But here's the question no one asks. Valuable compared to what? Paul wasn't replacing billable hours. Linda wasn't skipping paid work. They were replacing scrolling, passive entertainment, and low-value downtime. They weren't trading money for time. They were trading low-value time for high-value money. And then they were letting compounding do the heavy lifting. And another unexpected thing happened. They discovered that money wasn't the only benefit from doing more themselves. Every time Paul fixed something himself, every time Linda handled a task they used to outsource, every meal they cooked together instead of ordering, they felt something that a lot of people are missing: satisfaction and a quiet sense of pride. It was the feeling of, we solved this, we handled this, we're capable. That feeling compounds too, and that feeling makes it easier to keep going. Here's the key takeaway. Like Paul and Linda, you don't need to become minimalists. You don't need to give up all comforts. You can still pay for some services. The secret isn't perfection, it's direction. Each new skill reduces expenses, increases confidence, and accelerates compounding. The point is, you don't need to do all of it. The goal is to enjoy your life, But whatever you can learn to do yourself and snatch from the jaws of the convenience trap will put more money into your own coffers instead of the coffers of someone else. That is how you leverage your financial future. Here's the truth a lot of people don't like to hear. Wealth isn't built through big, dramatic decisions. It's built through small ones, made consistently, and left alone to compound over time. Every time you choose, I'll do it myself this time, you're not just saving money. You're buying future freedom, margin, optionality. Paul and Linda didn't earn millions of dollars more than their peers. They just held on to more, plugged some holes, and leaked less. And they stayed patient. If this video changed how you see small expenses, subscribe to Millionaire Thinking, because the loud mistakes are obvious, but the quiet ones, they're the ones that decide your future. See you in the next video.